The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. This is Senior Meteorologist James West with the Earth Network's weekly weather webinar for December 1st. We have made it to the 12th month of 2020, which means that we are at the official start of meteorological winter. This is some people be wondering that, oh, I thought winter starts on the winter solstice. It's later this month, but the reason why meteorologists decide to have the winter start on December 1 is because this is the reason. Boston NWS has given a nice little rationale for it, reason for it, is because we characterize it by the 3 months with the lowest average temperatures, which are December through February, rather than using the solar cycle. And because of the fact is we do actually have winter weather going on right now in many parts of the U.S. So it started yesterday, but so this is a nice. This is the time of the year when we transition from the autumn patterns into the winter patterns, and the same thing is that in March we start getting to a springtime pattern instead of a winter pattern. So it's the start of winter today, and there's another milestone which we'll talk about a little bit later as well. But as we always start out, here is a look at the satellite view across the U.S. This is the visible view showing the big, huge storm system that is still winding up across the eastern Great Lakes and into the Northeast. Just brought some really wicked weather yesterday across many parts of the East Coast. It was also bringing a very cold shot of air deep into the south. This clear air, you can see clear skies are indicating very cold temperatures, and these cumulus clouds over the Gulf of Mexico also indicates how cold the air is. You can kind of see there's a cold front. This little streak right here is the cold front, which we'll show about here. And then we also will see the temperatures in Maine are much warmer than down here, and that's because we have this nice southerly flow coming off the Atlantic, producing that warm air, warm temperatures. Of course, that will change quite drastically later today and into later this week across the Northeast. The rest of the country, it's clear sailing. It's a very quiet weather pattern across the central and western U.S. with only a few spots of snow possible over the central Rockies. And we'll talk about that a little later. And then across the Atlantic, we have this little system that's near the Azores, which could possibly become a subtropical system. And so we'll also talk about that a little later. Here's the weather surface analysis, just to kind of show you where the fronts are in relationship to how it's analyzed across the U.S. And like I said, here's the cold front. It's gone all the way. It's swept all the way across Florida. It's all the way extending all the way down into Cuba and into the Caribbean, and then off the Atlantic coast into the Northeast. Whereas the warm front is in Maine, and we can see from the temperatures that we have here live, we can see that there are areas of the southern U.S., like in Birmingham, Alabama, is in the mid 30s with 20s in parts of the Tennessee Valley, whereas in Maine, we have 50s and 60s degree temperatures, and that's due to this very warm air ahead of the cold front that has already swept through into many parts of the area. And if we were to plot the dew point temperatures here, we can see the dramatic difference between the dew points and from the cold, dry Arctic air that has swept across the Central Plains into the south versus the very warm maritime air across the Northeast. These are the dew points. So we have dew points in the 50s, which is in parts of Maine and in Massachusetts, eastern Massachusetts, Cape Cod area, compared to 20s very dry air across the south. And then another feature that we'll be looking at is the snowmaker. That's an enhanced snowmaker that's including some lake effect snow in addition to some upper level energy, and we'll show that a little later. But zooming out a little bit, we can take a look at some things across the globe. Again, we have the weather across the Northeast. No weather, hardly much significant weather across the rest of the central and western U.S. Africa is pretty quiet. We are starting to see some tropical thunderstorms across northern Australia into the Indonesian area as they start to get into their summertime pattern across Australia. Even some thunderstorms across in the southeastern corner I believe this would be closer to the Sydney, Canberra areas. And then we also have this other system near Sri Lanka, which we'll also talk about later. But otherwise, it's across the world. There's not a lot of significant weather going on for this first day of December. One of the things that I like to do every morning is go through and look at some of the high definition cameras that we have across the country. And this was done just before, this was right after sunrise, so about 7 a.m. Central Time. This is in Iowa, where the very cold, dry air is located. And one of the things that this image is showing is a very strong inversion. Now, inversion is just a very cold pocket of air sitting really close to the ground, and so therefore a lot of the pollutants and clouds and anything else is trapped underneath that layer until this inversion breaks with the heating of the day, and the temperatures start rising in the lowest air column. But you can see over here on the left side a very shallow inversion where the steam and other steam clouds generated from this, I believe this is probably a factory of some sort, is kind of sitting very low to the ground over here on the left side, and that's due to the inversion. Once this inversion breaks, it will, this cloud will diminish in it, and it will still remain very clear. So this is a nice little interesting wintertime picture just to show what you can, some of the local weather you can see on our HD cameras across the country. And speaking of HD cameras, here's some ones in northeastern Ohio going Great Lakes. This is Cedar Point in Sandusky. As you can see, it's snowing there. This is an enhanced lake effect event, which is going to produce anywhere from 10 to 20 inches of snow in parts of northeastern Ohio into northwestern Pennsylvania and western New York. The reason why we're saying it's an enhanced lake effect event is because there is this upper level trough that's going to sweep through, is going to enhance the lake effect snow bands that are developing as the northwesterly winds cross the Great Lakes and produce the snow across northeastern Ohio into this area. This is the start of the lake effect season across this area, and this is going to be one of the big first significant lake effect events of the year here. And then here's a look at Akron, Ohio. It's a little bit farther inland, so it's more of a slushy snow. But this is another one that's along the lake shore. This is Lorain, Ohio. On a clear day, you would see Lake Erie throughout the horizon, and there's a river that runs through here that runs out into the lake. But today it is very snow covered, as a significant amount of lake effect snow. This is the most recent image from that. And then here is the lake effect snow, and the upper level energy that's producing the snow is also producing snow across western Pennsylvania. This is in Mars, Pennsylvania, just north of Pittsburgh. They have a nice little snow wintry scene there as well. So these are some of the things that we like to look at, just to have some ground truth verification of the actual weather that we see on the radar. This is a nice little view. So I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to look at some of the other things that are happening around the world and some of the things that happened over the past week. One of the things that that has been recorded in the last couple of weeks have been significant meteors from the Perseids meteor shower, which peaked a couple of weeks ago. And this is a fireball that was caught in Japan over the weekend from a dash cam in a car. And so, it's kind of interesting. It's kind of nice to see technology catching some of the things that we would see across the world. So let me go ahead and kill this. And then here's another thing. This is from New Zealand. This is actually a roll cloud that swept through parts of the South Island of New Zealand as summer has come in, and it's a nice little view. This is a time lapse showing that roll cloud rolling across the horizon, so you can kind of see the rolls pushing through as it approaches the airport, and then once it pushes through, it just turns very gray behind it. And so, this is a nice little feature that's I found looking for things to show you today. And then this was from yesterday. This is the Verrazano Bridge in New York City. This crosses the Verrazano Narrows between Staten Island and, I'm probably going to get the wrong, I believe it's Brooklyn or Queens. I'm sorry, my New York geography is not that great, but this happened yesterday from the wind that roared through with that cold front yesterday. You hear it creak and moan as the bridge rolls in the wind. You know, obviously everybody knows about the Tacoma Narrows Bridge that collapsed with a similar type of wind in the Washington area in the 1940s. Galloping Gertie, it was called. This is probably designed to do this. The suspension bridge does flex in the wind like this, but obviously there's a reason why it was closed. It'd be kind of a dicey drive across it yesterday. And then here's a look at some of the snow from this morning in Ohio. You can see it's got a nice 5, 6 couple inches of snow on the ground already from the snow that fell overnight. And the last thing, one of the other things that December 1st brings is the fact that hurricane season is officially over. It ended yesterday in the Atlantic Hurricane Basin. And so here are some statistics that you know, I've used Philip Klotzbach before. He does a nice job of explaining some of the things. And this is the cumulative cyclonic energy by storm breakdown. Cumulative cyclone energy is a way to kind of measure the amount of energy that was used to create hurricanes, tropical storms and hurricanes. And you know, he stated that Teddy generated the most of it. And here's another chart that explains, kind of shows it in the bar chart with the amount of ice that was created during the year. Another thing that he mentioned was give a little recap of the Hurricane Laura was the strongest continental U.S. landfall hurricane of 2020, and it tied the last island hurricane of 1856 for the strongest max winds for a Louisiana hurricane landfall on record. So this is by far one of the most memorable hurricanes of the U.S. hurricane season. We did have a lot of other memorable storms with Eta and Iota hitting Central America. And then here is a look at the observed totals with the named storms. This also indicates their forecast information. Everybody forecasted above average, but no one was expecting a record number of storms with 30 named storms, number of named storm days, and all. You can look up this chart. But the biggest thing you can see is the percentage average of the 1981 to 2010 average is, everything is at least double, if not, it's at least almost double, in many spots, close. And so this was a very historical tropical season based on just the statistics that were collected during the year. Here's another different perspective of the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season from the National Hurricane Center, showing the number of hurricanes that hit the U.S. coastline, 12, which usually we only have 13 hurricanes in a whole season. And a previous record was 9 in 1916. And then here's another key fact, 5 of which came ashore in Louisiana. 10 named storms formed in September, which is most for any month on record. We had 10 rapid intensification storms sampled by NOAA and the U.S. Air Force. And so that is very unheard of to see so many rapid intensification storms in one season, including 6 major hurricanes. We also had, here's some information about hurricane hunters. They had 86 missions, 102 hurricane eyewall passages, 678 flight hours, and they did nearly 1,750 or more than 1,750 Robinson deployments. So that's a lot of work that kept those NOAA hurricane hunters busy this year. And then here's some other information that is available. This was available on the NOAA.gov website. It's the first story on the NOAA.gov's website if you want to read more about this information that's presented in this chart. And then, of course, the Atlantic hurricane season is acting like it doesn't know what day of the year it is, because we do have one disturbance, which we did see on that satellite, that subtropical area, that non-tropical area, north in the Azores area. This system has a 30% chance of developing possibly into a subtropical system. We'll see. We'll have to keep an eye on that over the next couple of days, even though we are in December. Now, speaking of the tropics, we do have other tropical disturbances, but these are across the Indian Ocean, in the Indian Basin. We do have one system that is being watched here east of Sri Lanka. It's a system that currently does not have a name, but it is something that on a couple of the satellite images, it does look pretty nice. This is possible tracks. We have it possibly going over to northern Sri Lanka and possibly into southeastern India. And this is the actual satellite image from the Indian Meteorological Service, and it does look it's starting to look like it's really starting to get developed and possibly looking more tropical in nature. And so this will be something that will also be watched over the next several days in this area of the world. These systems do develop in this Bay of Bengal area this time of year, and they can bring some troubles to Sri Lanka and southeastern India. And in fact, this is the weather forecast of the current model run for the US models, and it does have it going into northern Sri Lanka and then eventually into southeastern India, bringing a fair amount of heavy rain into those areas. And before it dissipates over the next several days. And then so back closer to home, we can look at the forecast for the US. And so this is the latest model run that we have, showing the setup that we're expecting over the next couple of days. And so what we are seeing here is this low pressure system that is going to move into, it's currently analyzed over Lake Ontario. It's going to move up the St. Lawrence Valley and continue northeastward as we continue. And we can see where the cold front is. The cold front sits in this area where the rain and thunderstorm activity over the ocean is occurring. You can see that it runs all the way down into Cuba. The key feature that we are seeing is these blue lines here. This indicates the thickness levels that are indicated that there's cold air moving in here. So we have this, and the winds can be almost parallel to the isobars here. So the tighter they are packed, the stronger they are. So we are seeing very strong winds indicated coming off Lake Erie and Ontario, producing heavy snow over northeastern Ohio and into western Pennsylvania, which is producing the heavy snow that we saw on the spheric map, which we'll pull up a little bit later. And that snow is making its way all the way into the central Appalachians and into eastern Ohio and western Pennsylvania, which we indicated on the snow. For the rest of the country, this is also showing the very cold air that we saw in the southeast on the temperature maps. This cold air has reached all the way down into the southeast and almost in northern Florida. This 540 thickness line that you see here is an indicator that the air mass is thick enough thick enough to be near freezing, and that's an indicator that how cold this air is that has reached all the way down in the southeast, and we did see those sub-freezing temperatures all the way down there this morning. Now with the sun coming up, the temperatures are still rising above freezing. They're probably only going to reach into the 40s and 50s right now. And then as we go into later today, we are seeing that the low pressure system is going to continue into eastern Ontario, and the cold front is going to move through Maine. So those temperatures that the 50s and 60s seen right now are going to quickly drop back into wintertime 30s and 40s, and then probably 20s and 30s, teens and 20s tonight. And then as we go looking into tomorrow, the lake effect snow diminishes over Ohio and western New York, but we now start to see a little bit of lake effect snow possible coming off Lake Ontario into northern New York and central New York, the snow belt areas from Syracuse northward into Watertown. So those will be watched on Wednesday. The colder air starts to diminish across the southeast, and we get a new system coming out of the southern Rockies that are going to produce some rain and probably a little bit of thunderstorms across eastern Texas and eastern Oklahoma, with a chance of some snow across western Oklahoma with the cold air behind it. Otherwise, the west remains dry and mild, which is not going to help their drought situation, which we'll talk about a little later. And then the system, as we go into Thursday, the northeast clears out, return to more, the cold air starts to retreat away from the northeast, and we start to see a return of more seasonable temperatures in those areas. But we will have to watch this next system, which will move across the Ozarks and the Arklateq region, and then eventually into the lower Mississippi Valley. But the system is not going to bring that much trouble. It's just going to be a little bit of a rainmaker across the lower Mississippi Valley with a few thunderstorms possible along the central Gulf Coast as we head into late Thursday into early Friday. And as we head into Friday, later in the week, the low pressure continues and moves into the southeast, bringing some rain and potential thunderstorms across northern Florida and into the southeast and eventually into the mid-Atlantic. Now, this system is not going to be as we head into Saturday, there's a chance for a little bit more stronger development with some heavy rain moving into the northeast and the mid-Atlantic with some snow potential across the central Appalachians and the colder air that might develop there. And then as we head further into the weekend, the system is going to move across New England, bringing heavy rain and wind on Sunday. But again, we are seeing a quiet weather pattern across the rest of the U.S. with only a small chance of some rain moving into the northwest as some energy moves off the Pacific. So this is the look for the rest of the weekend. Temperatures wise, we're going to be cooler than normal across the Midwest, with warm weather across much of the Rockies and the Western Plains. Looking ahead for the rest of the month, we have the 6 to 10 day outlook for NOAA. We are seeing that temperatures for this first period is going to be below normal across the southern tier into the northeast, and above normal across the northern plains and into the northwest. We are also going to see some dry weather across. It's going to be a very dry period across all of the U.S., which we saw trending in the model forecast, where we are going to be dry here. And then for the 8 to 14 day, we're starting to get in the middle of the month in December. Again, we have temperature patterns where the southern tier is going to be below normal, above normal potential for the Midwest and the West Coast. And it's hard to say what the temperature pattern will be across the mid-Atlantic into the southern central plains and the southwest. Looking at the precipitation, again, we are continuing to remain very dry, with dry weather across the east and the southern plains and the Great Lakes, and the West Coast remains very dry with above average potential for some mountain snow across the northern and central Rockies. And then finally, as we look towards the end of the month, as we get closer to the Christmas season and the winter break coming up at the end of the year, we are seeing that temperature probabilities look to be above average for most of the U.S., which probably indicates that it's going to be kind of hard to have a white Christmas, except for maybe in the northwestern U.S. and in the northeast, where the precipitation potential is going to be above average for those periods heading into the latter half of the month. And then finally, I'm just going to show you the drought forecast. This is from last Thursday. This is nothing surprising here. But we see that the dry weather is going to be continuing to be dry across the southwest into the west coast. This is a continuous pattern that we are seeing this year, and this is due to the La Nina pattern that has developed across the U.S. For the winter. It's expected that this area will remain very dry, but there's a lot of other areas that are continuing to see drought conditions, and that includes the northeast and parts of the Appalachians into the central and northern plains. So this will be a situation that we'll be watching all winter to see what the snowpack does across the Rockies and across the Cascades and Sierras, because remember that the the snowpack across the Rockies and the Sierras and the Cascades through the Western Mountains act as a water battery for the country, in the sense that the snow accumulates in the mountains and then it starts to melt and melts during the spring and the summer, feeding the rivers and the water systems that provide water to many of the semi-arid and arid regions of the southwestern U.S., including Phoenix, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, those areas. So these are always things that we always keep an eye out all winter to see how the snowpack is going, and we'll definitely, as we get later into winter, bringing some information from the California snowpacks and from the Department of Forestry snowpacks. They go out and measure snowpacks to help people plan water usage for the rest of the year. So that's it. Is there any questions from any of the users? I see someone mentioning that I should mention Canada. There's a Canadian on here. And so I'm not afraid to use Canadian, so we can talk about some of the provinces here. So the weather that's going on, they're seeing similar weather to what is happening across the northeastern Ohio and Pennsylvania, with a lot of snow heading across western Ontario and across central Ontario, with rain and the warm weather across Quebec. That situation will continue through Wednesday, with the heavy snow moving across into Quebec and northeastern Ontario here. Heavy snow with the lake effect snow generally being downwind into the US right now, with a little bit of lake effect coming off of Lake Huron into western Ontario, and then in parts of this upper northwestern Ontario as well. And then also, as we go later on, the snow moves away into western Quebec, and then cold air returns to much of eastern Canada. So, and I'm glad for the compliments from our Canadian friends. So, is there any other questions? The question board is open. Hopefully I have covered a lot of the information today. Today is the first day of winter, last day of hurricane. Yesterday was the last day of hurricane season. Hopefully you got a lot of information from it. Don't feel afraid to send us a note during the week if you have any questions about weather situations that we can talk about on the Tuesday presentations. We gladly take suggestions and research the information and help you guys out with any way we can. If there is no other questions, one question: El Nino or La Nina? Yeah, we are right now in the La Nina pattern. I don't have the map up. It's something that we have talked about in the last couple weeks. And so what happens in a La Nina pattern, it is conveyed pretty well in the drought map. What happens in a La Nina pattern is that the jet stream, the western jet stream, the jet stream stays well to the north. So most of the Pacific storms that come off the Pacific generally only go into the northwestern U.S. and then eventually tracks across southern central Canada, Alberta, Manitoba, and then eventually tracks across the Great Midwest and into the Northeast. So there's a large potential for very limited rain and snow for the Sierras and into the Southern Rockies, and this perpetuates a drought situation that will probably perpetuate the drought situation that is in those areas. As for temperatures usually indicate a lot of times that we're seeing that in these long-term forecasts, is the fact that the temperatures will be likely to be, most of the time, the eastern and the southern U.S. will be above normal, with cold outbreaks only reaching into the Midwest. Now, this is a little bit different from a typical La Nina pattern, but long-term wise, when you average out the whole 3 months of the winter season, what usually happens in the La Nina pattern is that you'll have cold outbreaks across the Midwest and Great Lakes and into the Northeast, with the rest of the country being above average and the rainfall potential being very similar to what this pattern is showing, with above average precipitation in the northwestern quadrant of the U.S. and the northeastern quadrant of the U.S. in La Nina situations. La Nina is definitely a strong does have a large influence on winter weather. But there are La Nina events that do occur that sometimes are different from what is expected. For instance, several years ago in La Nina, they had several big systems go through southern and central California, which caused a lot of mudslides and some flooding and some snow deep into the southern Sierra, and it produced a large snowpack. So, you know, it's La Nina just is another indicator for helping us forecast. But there are sometimes outliers where other situations have created different weather situations than what is expected. But this is a nice little, always a nice little marking on what can be expected. So I hope that explanation makes sense for everybody. I know I did a little bit longer than just saying it's La Nina. All right, well, we're at 11:30 in the East. We fulfilled the 30 minutes of the webinar, and I don't see any new questions coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and sign off. I wish everybody a nice first week of December, and we'll be back here next week on December 7th with another presentation at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So please sign up, and we'll see you then.